Between the 1970s and well into the new century, I've embarked on a number of journeys across the Australian mainland.
Let me take you on a journey and show you some of the car troubles I've had while exploring the Australian outback. In 1987, I commenced a journey that would take me into New South Wales, South Australia, Northern Territory, then into Queensland. The only vehicle I could afford at the time was a Ford Cortina, designed more for the English roads than the outback tracks that I planned to travel on. Not enough clearance plagued me throughout that trip, and the roads north of Broken Hill were just the start. I was about 1 kilometre out of Milparinka on my way to one of Australia's earliest explorers' camps when I lost the exhaust. After a lot of messing around, I eventually got it bolted up again. The next day I was heading towards Inaminka. Sections of the track consisted of soft sand that was a challenge to drive through, but those conditions weren't to last. The track suddenly split into two, and I was at a loss what direction to steer the car. In the end, I picked the wrong track and hit a large mound of dirt with a thud that vibrated throughout the car, and dragged the pipe and myself under the crippled vehicle to make repairs. While I worked on the car, a dingo came out of the bush to see who had encroached on his territory. There I was lying under the car with a wild dog staring at me, only a few metres away. We eyed each other over, and after a few minutes both came to the conclusion that neither was a threat, and we went about our own business. That wasn't the last of my exhaust problems. On my way back to civilization, I came across a sea of water stretching at least 1 kilometre along the track. I was lucky enough to meet up with some oil workers who agreed to tow me through the water. Unfortunately, the back pipe hit a large rock and wrapped itself around the back axle, stopping the car dead in its tracks. Now, if they hadn't have been there, it would have been the end of my trip. They removed the back wheels, dismantled the axle and untangled the exhaust, then put it all back together again. The bent tubing spent the rest of the journey to Port Augusta on top of my roof rack. It wasn't until I was travelling south again through Western Queensland, en route to the town of Birdsville, when I was reminded that I was in the wrong vehicle for outback travelling. In the weeks preceding my arrival to the Channel Country, it had rained a lot and left all the roads impossible to travel on. Now it was drier, but the track was in a very bad state, and my car was going to experience more troubles when I became marooned on a small island in the middle of a large river of water that had gathered on the track. Even a four-wheel drive vehicle wouldn't have attempted to drive through this area. Lucky for me, 2 four-wheel drive vehicles did arrive and towed me in reverse out of that mess. Before leaving, they pointed out the track I should have taken. My usual habit of filming as I went through bad sections was still being exercised when I travelled south down the Birdsville track. It was a constant exercise keeping the car facing in the right direction. Most of the time, when the car got into deep wheel ruts, it just had to go where the ruts took it. The front end was constantly being used as a plough. I had only done 75 kilometres of a 500 kilometre track when I arrived at a section where a semi-trailer had really cut up the surface. The plan was to keep one set of wheels on the top of the ridge and the other set of wheels in the rut. I set the camera up to record the car negotiating the hazard. I only got halfway when the car slipped off the top ridge and finished up with all 4 wheels in the ruts, leaving the bottom of the car hard against the mud. It was 11 o'clock in the morning and I was stuck fast. It took me all day to extract the car from my predicament. By then it was 4:30 in the afternoon and the sun was getting lower in the western sky. Those 75 kilometres back to town were taken quickly. I needed sunlight to see the best part of the track to drive on. Just on dusk I sighted the lights of Birdsville and limped into town a short time later.